Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for all Illinois students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admission Counseling and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping items before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. So the Q&A at the bottom. Your camera and microphone are off completely, so the panelists can't see you or hear you. And then just a reminder, this is one of many sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule, which is at IACAC.org. And additionally, this presentation is being recorded and it will be available within about a week at the same website at IACAC.org. And now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Hi, everyone. We are thrilled to have you with us tonight, so thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us. My name is Megan O'Rourke, and I have with me Sarah and Karin, and we are delighted to be able to present some information about admission interviews. So we really wanted to give you the lowdown on the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, all the necessary details as you go into what's probably going to be a virtual, possibly, most likely, virtual interview process. What is it going to look like? How can we help kind of get you prepared for that? And then answer any questions as we go. So as Maddie explained, feel free to ask questions as we are going along. We would be happy to answer those for you. Here's a little bit of information about us. Sarah and Karin, do you want to introduce yourselves or do you just want me to roll? I'll do the intros. Sarah's at the University of Oregon. This is her second year. She's regionally based here in the Chicagoland area. She works with a number of states in the Midwest. Admission essays are her favorite. She's an English lover, so she will be definitely a great resource for any students that are looking to go a little bit farther west. Karin Smith is at Beloit College. She is also regionally based, just like I am. So the three of us recruit and work with students in the Midwest, and we are happy to have you with us. Karin is our veteran of the group. She has worked with a lot of students and really been changing lives in the Chicagoland area for a long time. So we're thrilled that the three of us could bring you this information this evening. So let's talk about the interview and why, what is the purpose of the interview when it comes to the admission process. I think a lot of students are nervous or apprehensive about this component specifically. It's not a requirement at every school. So let's lay that groundwork first of all, that this is not something that you'll find at every institution, but at the places that do offer them or do require them, let's talk through the reasons why a school is going to utilize an interview. I think in many ways, one of the biggest reasons, at least from my perspective, and I work at Providence College, so at PC, we don't require interviews, but we encourage students to participate in them. And one of the big reasons is because we know that we have a lot of really great students that are applying to our school, just like at Oregon, just like at Beloit. And this provides us just a little bit more detail, a little bit more information when it comes to kind of looking at the whole package. For us, as institutions that have a variety of goals in mind when it comes to putting a class together, I think it's important to understand that we want to learn from you kind of what you're excited about, what you're passionate about, what's kind of shaped you in the 16, 17, 18 years that you've been alive, and how that kind of correlates with what we are looking for in candidates for our respective institutions. We come from three totally different places, and I think the schools provide students a lot of great opportunities. And so this interview then also becomes a way for you to learn more about our institutions. We talk, people in our jobs, Sarah, Karin, and I, we talk a lot about this idea of fit. And it is a little bit overused, but I think it necessitates a larger conversation about what exactly is important to you. What are the things that you have to have when you are going away to school? It's obviously a big investment. And how can you ensure that the school that you're looking at or the schools that you're considering check all of these boxes? From your perspective, I think when you go to sit down with an interviewer, there are some things that you can kind of showcase about yourself. I think for a lot of students, this is a way to talk a little bit more about their experience, your experiences as a high school student. how you are going to be a good fit academically for the institution, right? How you've kind of been able to learn, or knowing how you learn best in a classroom setting, being able to share that with your interviewer, the things that you do outside of school, the kinds of experiences you've had, the things that you've been able to learn from participating and being involved, or maybe you have a job where the job has really taught you a lot about interactions with other people and working with a team. All of those are transferable skills when it comes to moving from high school to college and then beyond college. So figuring out a way to kind of share that with the interviewer, that's definitely going to be something that we hope that you are ensuring that you're talking about while you're talking with us. Ultimately, though, I think one of the things that we hope that you walk away from the interview with is having your questions answered. I think in many instances, and we'll get into the timeline of like when you interview and kind of what experience you're going to have or what stage you'll be in when you interview, but ultimately students are trying to determine fit, and one of the things that will help is doing a little bit of research about the school beforehand and figuring out, if I'm in this major, what's going to be required of me? Does the school have core classes that might be a part of my time on campus? How many years am I going to be living on campus? Things that might seem like a little mundane or even just run of the mill, but I think for a lot of students, they definitely play a part in just the overall understanding of what this school provides, what this school offers, and how you fit into, as a student, the bigger picture of that campus community. Karin and Sarah, anything else you want to kind of chime in on? Doing okay so far? Great. And like we said, feel free, pop those questions in the chat. We'll be happy to get to them as we go along. So let's talk a little bit about what the interview is going to look like. I think there are a number of ways that you might experience an interview as a student, and it's definitely going to be different from school to school. So the way that PC operates is going, even though PC and Beloit have similar student populations, we're both liberal arts schools, we probably come at the interview from completely different perspectives, and that's okay. I think we as schools try to prepare you as best we can for the interview. Like, here's what to bring, here's what to expect, so that you have kind of a general working knowledge. But you going into your interview knowing, hey, this might be totally different from the interview that I've done before at another school, is probably the best way to start. So be flexible. Know that the school might have a specific set of questions, or maybe it's a little bit more open-ended. The type of information that's shared in the interview can also change based on what that school really wants to learn from you in the time that you're sharing together. Some schools require interviews, like I mentioned. Some only offer them as a way for you to get to know the institution a little better. So when we talk about informative versus evaluative, what we're saying is, okay, I'm going to sit down with someone just to get more information about the school. I want to ask some questions. They're going to give me a little bit more information about some of the things that I'm wondering about, versus I'm going to sit down in an interview and be asked questions. And then there's some sort of evaluation that school and that interviewer will do after we meet, based on my answers and my responses and how kind of I perform, if you want to think about it that way, during the interview. I wouldn't be nervous about an evaluative interview versus an informative interview. I know that the evaluative one maybe sounds a little bit more intimidating, but I think you preparing yourself, you coming to this session tonight, these are the things that you can do to help yourself as you go through this fall to maybe feel a little bit better, feel a little bit less anxious about how this is going to proceed. You will inevitably, in the interviews that you do, encounter all kinds of people, which I just think is so cool. Our job, our profession, the career path that Sarah, Karin, and I have chosen, really, we get into a lot of different kinds of people that have biology backgrounds, public relations, English, history. We all came from different places, and we're all kind of passionate about helping you pursue your next step, whatever that's going to be. So the ways in which we communicate with you will inevitably be very different. So some people you might find it's just a conversation. We're chatting back and forth. You're asking questions, I'm asking questions. We have that kind of dialogue going. Others, it might be a little bit more formal, so that it's more of a presentation style. They're kind of checking boxes, making sure that you're answering those questions. I think it's best to just, again, go in and be flexible and know that you might encounter one or the other, or maybe some kind of combination of the two. Also know that you might be meeting with someone like Sarah Karn or I as an admission staff member. We work for the institutions that we represent, but you also could be meeting with an alum from that school. So in some instances, schools have alumni performing or interviewing prospective students at some point. Some of these interviews might be really positive. Others, they might not be. In full disclosure, and just to be blunt, because the level of information that we have as admission staff members is obviously, this is what we do, right? So it's going to vary from person to person. I think the thing to know, though, when you go into an interview with an alumni especially, is to know that the reason that they're there is because they love their school so much. They want to represent their school to the best of their ability. They might not have all the answers to your questions. That's okay. You can always follow up with the Karens, the Sarahs, and the Megans of the world after the fact. I think ultimately the reason that the admission office wants alumni to participate is to keep them engaged too, right? It's a way for the alumni to stay connected to their institution and to see kind of that next generation of student that's coming through. The other thing you might encounter, which I don't see as often, but a group interview. Some of you, if you have a job, might have run into a group interview before. It's not always the easiest, but I think you coming in, having done your research, maybe coming in with a handful of questions, being as prepared as you can, that's the best that anyone's going to be able to ask of you in those kinds of situations. They're a little bit trickier, but I think being able to kind of participate as best you can in a group dynamic, just make sure that you're trying to like get yourself in there every now and again. And I know that that can be hard, but again, doing your research ahead of time, having those questions ready, I think that'll help in the preparation part of it. Last but not least, I think, I touched on this very briefly. In all actuality, you're most likely going to be doing these things virtually. If you're a junior right now, you might actually be, when you get into senior year, able to meet with someone in person. The dynamic of a Zoom meeting versus an in-person meeting is totally different. And I think it's just a little bit harder to navigate a Zoom situation. So I think trying to pep yourself up and make sure that you're kind of ready to go when it comes to sitting down for a Zoom interview, making sure you're in a quiet place, it's well lit, you look presentable. That's really kind of the main key components of a Zoom interview. If you're meeting in person, obviously you're going to want to factor traffic into making sure that you're getting there on time, even a little bit early, so that you're ready to go when the interviewer is ready to meet with you, coming prepared with those questions, making sure you have a presentable outfit. The emails from the school should detail like, this is kind of general, interview like attire, I suppose. But if they don't, I would always say dressier is probably going to be better in this scenario. So business casual, meaning nice pair of slacks, blouse, polo shirt, some sweater of some kind, depending on the season, is going to be your best bet. It's never going to be an uncomfortable thing for you to show up a little bit more dressed up than coming in and having like a pair of sweatpants, pair of jeans on. But in Zoom, we don't know if you have sweats on. That's okay. Last but not least, for those of you that are looking at fine arts schools and thinking about tryouts and auditions of some kind, know that it's very possible. And an institution I worked for previously, this was actually part of the audition process. You had to have an interview with one of the faculty members in that fine arts department. Not a huge deal. Again, they're just trying to do the same kinds of things, get the same kinds of questions answered, talk about your background in that level, in that area of performance. Maybe you're a dancer, a musician. The faculty member, at least at the institution that I worked for, that was kind of what they were trying to glean is your experiences, how you came to be, so passionate about the instrument that you play or what have you, and figure out how you kind of fit into the larger picture of both that department specifically and that institution. So hopefully that helps kind of understand a little bit about what the interview is going to look like.
As Megan mentioned, there is a different timeline for when the best time to interview might be for different sorts of students in different sorts of situations. We meet with a lot of students at the exploration phase. So when they're trying to figure out, am I a good fit for Oregon? Am I a good fit for PC or Beloit or another school altogether? So we do meet with a lot of students typically starting about junior year, sometimes earlier, but I feel like junior year is a great time to start those exploration interviews. As Megan said, we'll sit down, we'll share a conversation, just kind of really about what you have going on, and it's going to be really informative. Your college counselor is probably going to talk a lot more than you in that interview, and that's fine. Moving into that application time period, we also meet up with a lot of students right now, fall of their senior year, that are either currently working on the application and want to meet with their college counselor or their college rep to say like, hey, I wasn't really sure what this part of the application meant, or I had a really rough junior year and I would like to talk to you about that before I submit my application, or a million other reasons. Or right after students submit their application, they'll sit down with a college counselor, a college rep, and talk about, I'm really excited about the honors college, or I'm really excited to fill out this additional scholarship form, or whatever it may be, or I'm just really excited about your college and I'm thrilled to get your decision. So that's the application timeline. And then increasingly, I meet with students after they've already gotten their decision and they're so excited, to have been admitted to the University of Oregon, but they still want to sit down and talk about, they're comparing all of those different offers of admission or scholarship offers or financial aid offers, and they really want to chat through making their final decision, and that's just fine. Sometimes I will meet with the same student in all of those times, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it's a phone call, or sometimes it's a full-on interview, but that's perfectly fine. Again, as Megan alluded to, Karin, Megan, and I are all in this field because we want to work with you. We want to get to know you and really help you through that process. So any of those times are perfect for an interview with us. How do I prepare for my interview? The number one piece of advice I will give you as you go through your college search process and your application process is read the directions. And it sounds so simple. You've been hearing that since kindergarten, perhaps earlier, but it still holds true. We will be very upfront with our expectations for your interview. We will tell you where, we will tell you when, we will tell you what to expect. So definitely read those communications and make sure that you know what we're getting into. I always encourage students, here is my mobile number. If you're running late, text me, call me, let me know. If you can't make it because life happens, just let me know, and that's perfectly fine. It's also really important to do your research about the college in advance. Don't sit down with me and tell me how excited you are to go to Oregon State, or how excited you are about our engineering program, because we don't have an engineering program. I've had those interviews before, and you're not going to get a black box. You're not going to get like crossed off my list. But it's hard for me to get excited to talk about you if I know you've just kind of like strolled in off the street wearing those sweatpants and ratty hoodie that Megan talked about. Because, students that do their research, we have a better conversation, right? It's easier for me to get to know you, and it's easier for you to get to know the school. So again, do your Google searches, do the things that you need to do to prepare yourself for that interview. And I always think it's a good idea to have a few specific questions in mind ahead of your interview. You don't have to come with like a full tablet or slate of questions, but you're welcome to. More importantly though, I think it's good to know, if I walk out of this interview with one piece of information, what would that be? Some students, I know, definitely me, I was pretty nervous going through my college search process. I didn't know what it was like to sit down with an admissions officer and be interviewed. So I straight up sat in front of a mirror and like asked myself questions and practiced answers. I was pretty nervous going through the process. And I know that there are students out there who are in that exact same boat as me, and that's fantastic. a lot more students, I think, just come into the interview excited to talk about the school, or excited to talk about themselves or their high school experience, or excited to talk about how much they love, you know, basketball or whatever it may be. And that's fantastic. So if you are the kind of student like me who's a little bit nervous and wants to practice, have at it. Ask your school counselor, ask a friend, ask another college rep, right? We're here to help you, but maybe not necessary for everyone. So my recommendations for success, again, do your research. It is easier than ever. Y'all have a little tiny computer that lives in your pocket. Type the name of that school you're looking at into your phone. See what pops up. See what pops up on Instagram. See what pops up in a Google search. As Megan alluded to, dress appropriately. Please do not waltz into your interview with me wearing your Oregon State hoodie. That's just going to make me feel bad. More importantly, though, gosh, don't chew gum. It sounds like a little thing, but you're going to be smacking away and asking a question, and your gum's going to fall out, and it's going to get real weird. So no gum. You might want to turn off your phone, but if your questions live on your phone, it's totally fine if you have it out or if you have it with you. But I do encourage you to silence it. It does get awkward when the phone rings, or more often if 13 texts are coming through while we're sitting there talking through your academic record. So do make sure that that is on silent. You don't need to have an agenda walking into this interview. You can just sign up for an interview, and any of us would be thrilled to death to meet with you. But it is your responsibility to let us know who you are, right? As Megan said, the purpose of this interview is for you to get to know the school a little bit better, and for the school to get to know you a little bit better. So help us with that. Be yourself, have fun with it. And again, this is the time for you to really talk about how your high school experience influenced who you are. You can talk about your grades. You can talk about maybe something really tough happened during your high school experience and it changed the trajectory of your life. Maybe absolutely nothing has happened in your high school experience and you are thrilled to death to go to college because you're waiting for your life to start, or whatever that may be. It's important for you to use that time wisely, to use it to the best of your advantage. More than anything else, the head fake and everything I've said so far is the most important thing is for you to be you. You don't have to put on airs. You don't have to like put on a sport coat because you think that that's what you need to do and sit down and sort of, pretend to be someone you're not. I'm not interested in that. I really want to get to know you because I'm excited to think about what you would be like on my college campus. And then follow up is great. I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten chatting with a student about the book that they're reading, and then we like talk about authors for 10 minutes, and I completely forget to mention, the major that they're interested in or something like that. So I am forever following up with students saying like, hey, I forgot to send you this link. And it's really on you to do exactly the same. If you walk out of the interview and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to mention I got a D junior year and I'm really nervous about it, send us a note. Shoot us an email, send us a text. We are not here to be gatekeepers. We're not here to keep you out of college. We're here to help you find the very best fit for you. Hopefully it's our institution, but if it's not, that's okay too. We're still here to help you really find the right path. Some common questions that you can expect for your interview. Why are you looking at my institution? Right? That's a pretty simple, pretty straightforward one, but you should be prepared with an answer because oftentimes I meet with students and they're like, I don't know, I like green. How did you hear about this institution? Again, there's over 4,000 colleges and universities in this country, so we're interested in why you're sitting down with us today, how you heard about us, why you're interested in us. It's always a good idea if you know what you're thinking about studying to know why you're thinking about studying that. You don't have to know, and that's perfectly fine if you're multi-interested or exploring or undecided. But if you know, hey, I want to be a biology major, you should know why. What are you involved with outside of class? Are you an athlete? Are you a theater person? Are you a musician? Do you love to read? Do you work 60 hours a week in your family's business? Or are you constantly watching your younger siblings? What do you like to do in your free time when you're not doing anything else? What's your high school experience been like? Did you like high school? Did you have the option to go to another high school? Why'd you choose this one? Right? The kinds of questions that help us get to know where your academic journey has taken you. And then what does your ideal college or university look like? When you close your eyes and you dream big, what does that look like? What maybe would you have done differently in high school? Or what are some areas that you know that you need to work on in college? And then finally, and I think that this is a really important one to be prepared for, and maybe it's the reason why a lot of you are thinking about interviewing in the first place, but is there anything in your application that you want to talk about for better or for worse? Is there anything we should know about you that maybe isn't going to come across so well in black and white on a piece of paper or a screen that you just want to talk about in long form? Because we are here for that. We want to hear that. It might be hard. It might be really tough to talk about sophomore year was a nightmare. I lost someone I loved and my grades tanked. But we do want to hear that story, and we want to hear it from you. And I always think it's easier in person. Again, I know I'm intimidating, but Megan and Karin are really nice. So if you're interviewing with them, you know, you're going to have a cakewalk.
Okay, before we segue to this next slide, there's a really good question in the Q&A. Please ask us more, but I want to answer quickly. So a student is saying, how do I find out which colleges have interviews, and do I need to sign up for an interview? There's a myriad ways to find out, right? So the one thing that Sarah and Megan and I have not talked about, which probably is unfair on our part, is some of us tend to call interviews something different, right? And so a few years ago, there was kind of this push to make interviews more friendly, sound more friendly, sound more like what they actually are, which is a conversation. And so way back a million years ago, when I started in this profession, of course, we called them interviews. Everyone called them interviews. Recently, I worked at another school, and we called them coffee chats, right? So sign up for a coffee chat. At my current school, we call them, of all things, MyX. That's what we call them to ourselves, right? But on our website, it says, sign up for a Meet Your Admission Counselor, MYAC. And I'm like, really? Okay, well, whatever. So if you don't, you may well find this information on the college website, right? Go to the admissions pages, look and see what we require, look and see what we offer. If that's not easy to figure out, email one of us, right? Email us, email us. I think I want to have an interview. Do you offer interviews? Is it required? Your college counselor might know, but really your best source of information is to contact the school that you're most interested in. So there you go. And I also want to give a shout out to a student that happens to be in the audience that I just interviewed the other day. So I don't know if he's checking up to make sure I did a good job or if we missed anything. I don't know. I'm sure he'll let me know. And he did a great job, by the way. Uncommon questions. So what are some things we might ask you that maybe you wouldn't be prepared for, right? And some are good and some are just head shakers, right? And we all have our own kind of little ways of doing this. What do you do for 2 hours on a Saturday? Not a club or a job. If you had 2 unscheduled hours, what would you do? Why do we ask that question? It's a softball one. It's usually one that you can be like, sleep. I can appreciate that, right? I really can. And is that a wrong answer? It is not. I might follow up on that answer. Share one thing you're proud of. Here's the other thing that we try to warn you about. And I happened to give a session like this yesterday with Sarah, actually. And we were talking about college essays. And college essays and interviews are a little alike in that we're going to ask you to talk about you, which in our culture is not necessarily a comfortable thing to do. It really isn't. We're told, don't brag, don't boast, don't talk about yourself. And then we're going to sit down with you and say, oh, please talk about yourself. And so to Sarah's point of I practiced in front of a mirror, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, right? Because if you're not used to talking about yourself, you need to think about that, right? So share something you're proud of. Boast. Tell us. Is there anything you would change about your actual high school? This is a question I love to ask. Part of it is selfish because I get to learn more about the high school you attend that I'm responsible for knowing a lot about. It also will oftentimes give me a hint as to how things have rolled for you at that particular high school. I think of my own 3 children who all went to the same high school. And if you were to ask them that question, you would get very different answers from all 3 of them. And it would tell you a lot about them. And actually it would tell you quite a bit about their high school. And so I always think, oh, geez, I can only imagine how different their answers might have been. What is the most unique elective course that you've taken? Or I will sometimes say, tell me about the courses you've chosen to take that haven't been required courses, and why did you take them? Right? We know you have a lot of requirements. We know you're living for that day that you get to say, yes, I choose that one because I'm really excited about it. Well, why? Share one unique thing about you that would add to the community of my school. That's kind of asking us to expand, or asking you to expand a little bit about what we might see in your extracurricular list. And then this is one that we've been asking a lot in the pandemic. Again, kind of selfish, right? So what media, YouTube, Netflix, music, books, comics, are you currently binging on? Because we're all binging on something, right? Because now it's one of the few things we can do, which is binge. But it also will tell us a little bit about you. And so those are some uncommon questions. You can't be ready for all of them. You just simply can't. But just know that it's likely that in an interview, you might be thrown a question that you really can't prepare for. And you just, here's another thing that I want to mention to you in your preparation. I remind people of this all the time, and that is the art of the pregnant pause. So oftentimes in our culture, we get everything is fast, right? We get a text, we respond to the text. We see something on TV, we quickly Google it. It's all very fast. And so I think we have a tendency to think that when we're asked a question, we have to immediately answer it. It's okay to take a second and collect your thoughts. It really is. It can be a little uncomfortable for you. It's never uncomfortable for us. It's truly not. And I would rather have you do that, think about what you want to say, come out confidently with your answer, than just feel that you have to answer it immediately. Okay, questions that you may want to ask us, right? So I think in all of this, it often gets lost that, oh, you're going to get to ask questions too, right? So think about those. And I think it's very fair for you to come up with a tough one for us, if it's important to you, right? Am I a good academic fit for your institution? Please ask me that question, right? It walks me right down the road of being able to give you lots of good advice and information. Is your institution a good financial fit for me and my family? Well, hello, it's kind of important, right? We can usually answer that question for you. Depending on where you are in the process, we might be able to really answer that question for you. Can I graduate with my majors and minors in 4 years? I would say follow up with that. Prove it, right? We all have statistics. We can tell you, and we're happy to tell you. And it's an important question to ask because I love to be able to talk about this in relation to my school, which is a small school, where we can very confidently say our students graduate in 4 years. Yes, we cost more than our flagship institution in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin-Madison. Do you know what their average graduation time is? 6.3 years. What? Students say to me, what? It's true, look it up. So you factor in that, and I pick on Madison because of course they're in my state. But you factor that into the cost of A, attendance, and also B, the cost that you would lose by not being in the workforce. And it's something to take into consideration. Now, Oh, what do students who graduate from your school go on to do? We're all incredibly prepared to answer that question for you. We didn't used to be. Like, that didn't used to be kind of the big deal that it is now and should be. Return on investment. What am I getting out of all of this? We are prepared to answer that question for you. And then I mentioned a minute ago that sometimes we get questions that we don't anticipate. And this last question that's listed, I was asked by a student 4 years ago, and I thought it was maybe the best question I had ever been asked. It was during the presidential election year. And she said to me, if the next and it was this presidential election, right? So if this presidential election were to be held only on your campus, how would that go? It's a clever, backhanded way of saying, tell me about the culture of your school from a political standpoint, right? And I was like, oh man, that's a good one. That's a very good one. So you want to think about those things that you want to ask us. We love it when you walk in with a list. But here's how that often goes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Is it okay? Like, I have a list on my phone. And I'm like, yes, it is not only okay, it's great. It tells me you have prepared. And here is often also one of the questions that will be served up like this. This question, this question, this question. And by the way, my mom told me I had to ask this question. It's fine. It's good. I already shared with you, I'm a mom. I'm sure I did that with my own children. Okay, Sarah. Oh, here we go. How are parents involved in the interview process? We're going to talk pre-pandemic and post-pandemic here, or mid-pandemic, tail end. Could we please be on the tail end of the pandemic? Although I don't think we are, right? Pre-pandemic, I would tell you this. Well, I'm going to tell you the same thing no matter what. You make that call, right? We're not interviewing your parents. They're not coming to our school unless you tell us they are. And then that's going to open the door for a whole way interesting conversation, right? So you call the shots on this. And I will say to students ahead of time, pre-pandemic, will a parent or guardian be coming with you? Yes. Okay, we're gonna meet. Do you want them to be part of the interview? And oftentimes students' reaction to that question is like, oh, I get to tell you? And I'm like, yes, you do, right? So what is very typical is that we will meet with the student and then bring parents in, guardians in at the end to ask questions that they may have, answer questions that they may have. I have had students that say, I really want my parents there the whole time. Think about that, what that's gonna tell us about you, right? I have had students say, I don't want my parents involved at all. Fine. I have had parents say, this is all about my kid. Enjoy your time with him. That mom lives in infamy in my brain. I was like, okay, great. I have had parents try to come in behind their child. And I said, nope, not yet. We'll have you in at the end. We're your advocates in this, but let's go back to, we're not interviewing your parents. They're not coming to school with you. So we let you have a lot to say about where that's going to happen. Now, during the pandemic, this has changed dramatically because we're Zoom interviewing with you, right? And I've had 4 scenarios that I'm going to tell you about. 2 of them in one day, 2 days ago. I log on, my student logs on, and all of a sudden on a 3rd screen, there's an Elizabeth. And the video is not on. I, of course, am like, oh my God. I double booked, something happened, holy cow, something. And then so I said, Elizabeth, I said, are you here to meet with me? And I could see the student, I was focusing on the student who gets a little pink in the cheeks. And he's like, that's my mom. And I'm, oh, okay. Now at that point, because it would just be too weird, I did not say, well, do you want her here? Right? Because that would have put everybody, in a weird spot. So mom turns on her video and she's there with dad. Lurking behind the student are the other set of parents, because he has 4 parents, a mom, a dad, a stepmom, a stepdad. This hasn't happened to me for a time. And I was like, all right, gang's all here. Let's go. And I have to say, this family handled this remarkably well. The student talked for quite a bit of the time, and then the parents, very polite and kind to each other and to me, asked their questions, and it kind of worked out just fine. I also had a student, same day, log on, dad's sitting right there through the whole thing and interrupting. And I'm like, oh, I was doing my best to focus on the student. Understand that we handle those things. We handle them all the time, and we will going forward. More often than not, I've had students that it's just the 2 of us and the parent comes in at the end. The best one I had was a couple weeks ago when it was just me and the student, and all of a sudden, halfway through, her 5-year-old sister, because, she was home with her 5-year-old sister, because that's her job, to take care of her 5-year-old sister when her parents are at work. And the 5-year-old sister, we thought, was happily watching something on television, and then suddenly she wasn't. The grace with which this student dealt with the 5-year-old sister took my breath away. She did not miss a beat. And 5-year-old sister sat down, pulled out a book, read, asked me a question at one point. Can you please help me pronounce this word? Spelled the word. We did, and off we went. So, you know, all kinds of things can happen, and none of them actually are ever disasters. I would encourage you to talk with your parents ahead of time, even particularly in a Zoom situation, about how you would like them to be involved in all of this. It will make it more comfortable for you, more comfortable for them, and more comfortable for us. And here we are. Questions, right? We have 3 minutes. Okay, here's one. Good one. Good question, right? Should I bring a resume to my interview? Megan?
I would say it wouldn't hurt, but it's not necessary.
I would say more often than not, students don't. But again, completely up to you.
Agreed.
Here's another one. How long will my interview take? Sarah?
Ooh, so at Oregon, we offer some quick interviews, about 15 minutes, but more often than not, I typically meet with a student about 45 minutes. And then as Karin said, what I like to do is reserve 10 or 15 minutes at the end to meet with a parent. So factor on about an hour.
We keep ours pretty quick. So Providence has 30-minute time slots for students to do interviews. So
we have 45 minutes and we get to choose that. I'm a talker, right? And so I'd rather have extra time than not enough time, because we also tend to stack up our interviews, one on top of the next, on top of the next, on top of the next.
I've got myself up in so much.
We've got another question. Do you have to bring a transcript to the interview?
You don't have to. You can, because sometimes there's something about that transcript you want to talk to us about. So it's not required. I've never worked anywhere where it was required. But if you feel comfortable bringing that, so you can say, look here, you're going to see this, and I want to talk to you about this. Please feel free to do that. Yeah.
Great questions, everybody.
Yeah. Do we have time? Okay, here's one more. One more. Can I ask my interview about, oh, this is a good one. Can I ask my interviewer about my chances of being admitted?
Please do. Absolutely.
We're happy to talk through that with you, for sure.
We're not going to give you a guarantee on the spot, but we'll give you some helpful information.
Totally.
Yeah. And now we're done.
Okay, Thank you so much, Megan and Sarah and Karin, for sharing all that amazing information about interviews with our participants today. And thank you to all the participants for joining us today. After you close this window, there's going to be a quick 4-question survey. If you wouldn't mind completing that to give us some feedback, that would be amazing. Also, please remember that there are many sessions that are still being offered, and you can sign up for those at IACAC.org. And then the recording for this session and all the sessions are going to be available also at IACAC.org. Thank you all so much and have a great night. Bye.
Thank you.